I'm my biggest challenge. I'm in a space now where I can accept that my assumptions of what is supposed to be meant for me need to be challenged and addressed head on so I can really dissolve those and move into the actual true purpose that lies ahead for me.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls podcast. I'm Aries.
And I am Kim.
And we are going to kick this episode off today with our Bold Black Girl of the Month segment. As you can see, we have a special guest, Jenae Butler. And we're going to do this segment first, and then she's going to stick around with us for the rest of the conversation. So, Kim, I'm going to let you kick us off so we can learn more about Jenae.
Absolutely. So welcome, Jenae, and thank you for joining us today for Bold Black Girl of the Month for the month of August. I know we reached out to you. I think, Aries, you reached out to her a couple of weeks ago, and we have just noticed you. We've been watching you for quite some time. I think we all met at a networking event at Microsoft through their BAM network. I think it's Black Employees at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft had the best networking events with great hors d'oeuvres, along with great content. So we don't want to, miss out on that. So we saw you working, and you made some moves and strides. And then recently we saw some updates from you across LinkedIn with all of the social injustice. So we'll get into that. So can you tell us, Jenae, just a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what are you doing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, thank y'all for having me. It's truly an honor to be on this podcast. It's all about Black women, and anything that's about supporting Black women, I'm 100% for. So it's an honor to be here with y'all. But a little bit about myself. Jenae Butler from Atlanta, Georgia originally, but I call myself a woman of the South because I move so much. I'm never in one city for too long, so work has moved me around quite a bit, but grew up in Atlanta, also grew up in Houston, went to school in Atlanta, made my way back to Texas, made my way to the Carolinas, made my way to Chicago. I've been all over the place in my 27 years of living. But as it stands, I'm a technical program manager. Actually, that title changes after tomorrow. I am an enablement program manager for Google Cloud. Yep, I got a new role that I start first thing 9 a.m. tomorrow that I'm really excited about. But
wow.
Work at Google. I've been at Google for about a year. They snatched me up from Microsoft, where I was a variety of things. I've never held one title for too long, and so I would call myself a tech creative, a disruptive tech creative that is all about empowering our community one way or another. I've always had a few skill sets that my 9 to 5 has underutilized. So I use my 5 to 9 to really let that bad boy show. And I think we've seen a lot of that in recent months. I published a deck called Standing United to the audience. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's a 14-ish slide deck as it relates to what happened with George Floyd and how that kind of kicked off our summer, while also talking about what it means to be an ally and how to go about that. And so I've been, in essence, teaching our aspiring allies how to let go of those biases and those assumptions and really lean into this movement. And there's so many directions I can go with that, but that's who I am. People call me JB for short. I work in the tech space. I live, breathe, die by this. Same with the Black community. Whatever I can do to uplift us through my platform, that's what I'm about. So
I love everything you've just said. Number one, woman of the South. So you're not afraid to pretty much pivot for a job and move to a different state, different role. So you're staying progressive. I love that. You don't seem to be afraid, so you're very bold. You are very bold.
And this is why she is
The bold black girl.
of the month.
Exactly.
And the things that you were just talking about, I know we'll dig more into it. We want to learn more about kind of how you got to this place, because that's the stuff that really was like, I'm like, okay, these are really bold times for companies where we watched different companies kind of step out a little bit and say the words Black Lives Matter for the first time. So watching you on LinkedIn, which is our professional platform of choice, right? Nowadays, it's like, if you're not on there, it's like, do you exist, right? So yeah, I would love to hear more about kind of how you, and maybe we could tap into like what you feel like your purpose is and where you feel like you're going as to how you kind of got into this. Got to this point.
The whole concept of purpose is something that I've always been intrigued by since college. I feel like college was like for all of us, like, it was a very transformative time, right? Like, we were really stepping into that phase of our life where we were really getting to know ourselves, where our interests lied, and what direction we really wanted to go in. And I had so many people around me who knew what they wanted to do. I've always tried to put myself in places and environments that had the people that I wanted to be like. And so I'm looking around and everybody's like, I want to be a doctor and I'm going to do the next 12 years of this, that, and the third, or I want to be in tech and I know I'm going to do this, that, and the third. They had all of their full plan like scoped out. And I never did. I moved a lot. And I think one thing that comes with moving a lot and just kind of, I think military children can relate to this too. I'm not a military child, but the same thing happens. You move so frequently and you're constantly starting over and rebuilding. You have a fleeting sense of purpose, a fleeting sense of self. And so purpose for me is something that I'm still uncovering. I'm still learning about what that is. I've finally gotten to a position in the last couple of years where I hope we're all women of the Lord, because I can't do nothing but brag to my Lord.
Oh yes, come on. We welcome that here. We preach here frequently, so
yes. The way that God has just moved in my life and the things that he has done to really align me inch by inch to really get to know myself, it's been an ongoing trying process, and I'm still in the midst of that. So I can't tell you what my exact purpose is because I'm still uncovering that. And I'm still unlearning a lot of the things that brought me to this point. I'm at a point in my life now where those behaviors, thought patterns, and I guess you could say assumptions or that mindset is no longer serving me. And so I'm unlearning a lot of those things so I can make room for what's next, so I can really dive deeper into what purpose looks like.
I love that. Alignment has been our word this year.
Yes.
Kim and I have been talking about yeah, we've been talking about alignment and just like making sure that whatever we're doing is in alignment with what we feel the path is. I'm with you on that whole, I can't be like, my purpose is blah. It's every day. Every day is my purpose. I'm just listening to what God is leaning me towards. That's the way that I feel like we should be doing that. And I think a unique thing, because you brought up your age. Number one, there's no age to being a bold Black girl or title, right? So though you're still early and fresh in your career, you still are making these moves. And I'm a believer of like, I don't know if you guys have read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about how these people who are really great at certain things, they were just born at the right time. They were born in like things just were at the right time in history, in the year. Like if you're born at a certain point, you can be a really great hockey player because your birth date matters, when the cutoffs and all these different things. Like these are things that they find. And I think that where you're at 27, when I came to Texas, I was 27. It wasn't the same environment. So you're in like a super awesome space at your age. Who knows what this is gonna, flourish into by the time you're our age, right?
Who knows? Exactly. I think that's the fun of it all. Who I am and what I've done, none of it was planned. I walked into college and I got so much anxiety from my friends who had their lives planned out. And I felt so much pressure to have my life planned out, but I could only do so much. I just said I wanted to get into tech. That was like as far as it went for me. And everything else, I was open and willing to leave that up to God. Like I couldn't define it any further. And so trying to step into whatever he has meant for me and designed for me has been a ride. I don't know what, I even me taking the job at Google, right? None of it was planned. None of it was intentional. And so I'm really I'm not going to say I'm going with the flow. There's a lot of intention and purpose there. But I'm really, my faith is really what's driving all of it. My faith and trusting God and faith and trust in myself too, right? Like imposter syndrome has been a common theme of my entire life. I think a lot of Black women experience that. And keeping imposter syndrome and fighting that and fighting the conflicts that come with that. I'm just taking it day by day. I'm trying to unlearn what imposter syndrome has taught me and really trying to propel in whatever direction it is that God wants me to go in. And I'm leaving it at that. And so far it's worked out in my favor.
So you touched on some great points, because at 27, even before 27, I was like, this is how my life is going to be. Mm-hmm. Realizing that my life wasn't going to be anything like I planned. I had to follow the will of God. And I think that's what you're doing, is you're really following that plan. Like you said, going with the flow, because you can't force your plans. We have to go with the flow of God's plan.
Right.
So we're also in a season of trust and trusting ourselves, but more so trusting God.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's a faith journey. So let's go into that. Like who have you been inspired by? Like what's your?
Yes. Who have I been? So I am a very empathetic woman. I am a people's person. My heart is big. I have a friend and he and I are very similar in how we treat people. And I always make fun of him and I say, your heart is bigger than your head, because that also applies to me. My heart is huge. And so because I've grown up in so many different environments, I've really learned to cherish the people around me. So I've always been inspired by the people around me. They've always been guiding stars, North Stars for me, to at least show me a direction that I can go in. But I think one of the people that inspires me the most, it's not cliche at all, but Michelle Obama, she really does something for my spirit. I will remember when I was working at Microsoft, one of my last roles, it was a really trying role, honestly. It was just one of those seasons where I had a skill set to offer and I had a lot to offer to this job, but it just wasn't being received that way. And it was a huge mental conflict for me. And it took a lot out of me. And I remember sitting in my car and listening to her book on audio, Becoming.
Yes.
And crying because her story sounded so much like mine. And I'm like, oh my God, this is coming from the First Lady of the United States. I've always found Michelle to be extremely authentic and honest and raw in who she is, but listening to her story and listening to how she got there, it would send chills up my spine because I'm going through the same exact thing. And I'm like, girl, you mean to tell me the Lotus
First Lady, right?
Forever First Lady.
Yes. And so I've always found myself to be very drawn to her through her elegance and her intelligence, but even more so when I heard her backstory that got her there. And I would consider her probably a huge inspiration, someone that I really look up to and hope to embody some of those type of characteristics when I keep saying when I grow up, but
girl, look, you can say it. Whenever I grow up, 27, from 27 to now, I definitely feel like I've grown up. Okay. So, yes,
on the way.
Things happen.
Exactly. So we're fans of Michelle Obama as well. And you talked about some of the adversity sitting in the car, and you were thinking about those challenges. So can you kind of share with us what is some of the adversity you faced, during your journey? I know you've only been here 27 years, but you've done a lot in your 27 years already.
Thank you. I think my biggest adversity is myself. To be honest, I put so many mental constraints on myself. I've embodied so many assumptions, and I'm a very imaginative woman. I have a mind, a creativity and an imagination that, if not controlled, can go off into 1,000 different directions, and so much so that I can convince myself that things are worse than what they are, or I can convince myself that I am not seen or respected or heard in a way that I want to be. And it's me bullying myself, right? It's whatever imposter syndrome does to us that makes us feel less than, like we are not worthy of X, Y, and Z. People feel X, Y, and Z of us. And that's been my biggest constraint. There's so many people who come in and out of my life, whether for periods of time or for short conversations. And there's always been words of advice and encouragement to push me along. But it's the internal challenges that I've had that made it hard to receive that and walk in spirit of that and really honor and accept that. So I really think my biggest challenge has been overcoming this false identity that I've had of myself for my entire life. Moving state to state, moving city to city, that has an impact on a small child. I never really got to know myself because I was constantly starting over and rebuilding and starting from scratch, right? I was constantly in a space of recreating, to the point where I never got that opportunity to get to know me, what I liked. I was molding to the environments around me. So I'm very adaptable, which is great. But in that, I allow the projections of people, places, and things to tell me who I am. And that has been the biggest challenge. I've been trying to move in spirit of the projected assumptions of what I should be doing, how I should be moving, and where I should be, and letting that tell me where life is going to take me, when God literally has a completely different direction for me to go in. And so I'm hitting like these, I would find myself hitting these really difficult crossroads or these roadblocks, because purpose is telling me to go left, but everybody else is telling me to go right. And so it's like, what do I know best? And in those moments, it would be my friends. My relationship with God has grown the older that I get. And so who I am now and where I am now and where my faith is wasn't as strong as it was a couple of years ago, or within the last 5 years. It has really grown exponentially. But I'm my biggest challenge. I'm in a space now where I can accept that my assumptions of what is supposed to be meant for me need to be challenged and addressed head on, so I can really dissolve those and move into the actual true purpose that lies ahead for me. So,
I love it. I know. I mean, because you're talking about getting roots, right? Not being able to establish those roots in the different places, right? So yes, I agree. Agility is great, right? But then when you haven't really dug your roots in, then you feel kind of like you're wavering, around a little bit. And I could totally relate to that. I think you're already ahead of the game by being 27 and talking about what you're talking about right now. This is stuff that I just started talking about in the last 5 years, you know what I mean?
Same.
Or less. Okay. Because building that relationship with God is how you are able to see clear. He speaks in whispers. If you can't hear him because you got all these distractions going on,
at you, right?
I mean, come on. It is not. It doesn't. You limit yourself. I just think it's something that a lot of us do as Black women. But just in general, when you don't have that relationship, sometimes you do that because you don't really understand how much is available to you out there.
Yeah. I could definitely relate as well. You aren't even listening to God. You're listening to the people around you. You're listening to the culture. So, and you talked about that. You said that all of your peers, they had their plans together. So looking back on that and that younger self, because again, you're still young and you're doing some amazing things. What would you give your younger self as advice? Because I'm going to share this with my daughter who's 20. So what advice would you give someone her age or
out of college?
We all have things that we've gravitated towards, but we never invested time, skill set, or craft into. If I had to tell younger me or just younger people, whatever that skill set is that you can get lost in, and you just, it's something that's almost therapeutic for you. Wherever you find yourself, whatever space you find yourself gravitating towards, and wherever you find yourself making an impact, even if it doesn't follow your career goals or what, you know, the expectations are of what your life should be, invest in that. I wish my younger self knew that me coding and creating my own layouts for MySpace back when that was popping, I wish I would have known I was flirting with a 6-figure skill. I wish I would have put more time and investment in that, because I would get lost in it. But I was told that I couldn't do that. I was told, no, you have to go and be a nurse. You have to be a lawyer. You have to fall into these very specific categories. And so me wanting to code and to create was looked down upon, right? It was frowned upon because we didn't see too many Black creatives like that, or like that were, at least where I come from, right? I come from a small country family. So like very traditional Christian beliefs, right? We fall into very specific buckets about what is acceptable and what isn't. And they're looking at that type of creativity as not making any money. But, you know, fast forward, you can make money off of that. I wish I would have known to just hold on to the things that I really care about instead of letting people tell me otherwise.
That is so good.
So I would tell that to anybody who's trying to figure out what purpose is. Look at the things that you gravitate towards. No matter how small or how you feel that it might not make you money, if it's meant for you, it's meant for you. There's going to be space for you. And we're living in a world that craves authenticity more than anything these days. And if you can move with that craft and that creativity and whatever it is that you can find yourself getting lost in and really build around, do that, because it's coming from heart. It's coming from an authentic place. And that's what people want these days. That can make you money. You don't have to worry about what the statistics show. If it's for you, it's always going to be for you.
Because your gifts will make room for you.
Yeah.
They will make room.
So we're kind of coming upon time for this particular segment, but I want to talk about your document, Stand United. What sparked that, and what do you see? Where do you see that going? Let's talk a little bit about that.
So it's been a heavy summer.
Yes.
Yes.
Nothing about this summer has been graceful or light in any way. So that deck came from the weight of that experience of being a Black woman living in America, knowing what we got to go through, and knowing that I want to be more active in this space, right? Especially in the space of racial equity, I really want to be more active because I'm a woman of people, I'm a woman of passion, and so like the community is always on my mind. How can I make a bigger impact? And so I figure I can't do that if I don't even know how to like make sense of my own thoughts. So that deck was me trying to thought process one. I'm a very organized person, and so I'll create a PowerPoint deck just to walk me through how to use a tool at work, right? Like me making a PowerPoint deck, that's nothing. I do that normally. But this deck was for me, I really put myself in the position of someone who doesn't know. So I'm like, if it were me, what would I need to know in order to learn and take action immediately? But then at the same time, I was thinking about the team that I'm moving away from as we speak. I'm the only Black woman out of 30 engineers, right? A great team, though. I love them with all my heart. They are great. But if you know engineers are engineers. They care about what they care about, and everything else can kind of fly over their head. And so I didn't want to see them set up for failure. So I'm trying to process my own thoughts, but I'm also trying to equip my coworkers at the same time. So I created that deck, one, to get it all out, but to also give them something so they can go into these conversations and not be completely caught off guard. So the scope of that deck, 30 people wide at most. Nothing that has come after that was intended whatsoever. Wow. It was really just those 30 people. I pushed it out to my manager Monday morning. By Tuesday, everything changed.
So what happened after that?
Yes.
Girl, what happened after? Well, okay, so it started with speaking engagements from June 2nd to now. I've probably done over 30 of those. I've talked to thousands of people at this point. I stood up a website. So now we got standingunited.co, which is your racial equity hub. I am featured, our CEO for Google is Sundar. He speaks to like all these commitments that we have to kind of really combat this, at least within our ecosystem. My content is hosted on our Google-wide website that talks about racial equity. I'm one of the primary resources. My deck has become a resource for so many working groups within Google, but it's also made its way to classrooms. It's also made a global impact. I've seen, I think the last time I checked, I might have been at like 10 or 11,000 views on that, but that's from the internal version because I also have an external. So it's globally visible and acknowledged, speaking engagements left and right. I'm moving into this space now. That's what
Go with it. Go with it.
Well,
going with it.
It's gonna be at my job too.
Like
Look,
you guys, right? Like so many things along those lines. Like I'm being exposed and having an opportunity to share my thoughts and opinions in a way that I never had before. So it's been beautiful. I mean, this exposure left and right. I'm trying to do a TED Talk now. I'm like, shoot,
yes, why not? Why not? Right? You're gonna be also this deck will be at Software One, it'll be at Salesforce. Like we're about to start sharing it with everybody.
Yes.
So we really appreciate you doing that. I just applaud your boldness, your courageousness, right?
Like admire it. Yes.
I was like, Bold Black Girl of the Month. Kim was like, duh. Like, yeah. I'm like, we're done with this.
I think her presentation is a favorite on my bookmark. Literally. Seriously.
Thank you.
Seriously.
That really, and I want y'all to know that means a lot to me for one reason. I don't think much of the deck. If anybody asks me about it, I'm like, I put that together in 3 hours and I shot it out. Grammar mistakes and all. Like there was so much wrong in terms of like how I thought what quality looked like. I'm like, no, this does not meet those standards. But if it's found to be valuable, then so be it. What I'm starting to realize is that to me, it was a small effort. To me, that was like one very small pebble thrown into a massive lake. But if you think about it, it doesn't really matter what size the pebble is when you throw it into the lake. That ripple effect is still a ripple effect. So I've moved away from that, it's just a deck mindset. Yes. It's just a small effort, and realizing that's really what it takes to change the world, right? It's just people agreeing or people understanding that they can only do so much, and whatever it is that they decide to do can cause that ripple effect. We all have a pebble that we can throw into this massive lake and influence others and inspire others. No matter how small we think of it in our minds, it can be huge for other people. And so if anything, that deck has taught me that we all have a pebble to throw and we all have an impact to make. And it doesn't have to be us trying to, paint the town red. We can all start with what we have, where we're at, with what our skill sets allow, and create something from that, and do something with that to really help push this needle forward.
No matter how small we think it is. I'm still kind of challenging myself with that because stuff that we think is easy, it's easy for you because that's your thing. You're good at. You're supposed to be, good at this. So don't minimize it because other people are like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." It's something that you're like, "I just rolled out of bed and did it." No,
I have my bonnet on, like.
Right. So, what I want to do is we're going to close this segment out, but I want to tell everybody to go to standingunited.co to visit her website so that you can see the deck, all the different information that she has there. Lots of resources where you can go and find more resources, books, and all these things, right? Articles, absolutely. All of that. Follow her on LinkedIn. We will put a link to your LinkedIn page and the website in the show notes, as well as any other. Do you have any other places that people can follow you?
Those would probably be the best. LinkedIn and keeping up with Standing United has an Instagram page. I forgot. I just did it. Cool. Standingunited.co is the Instagram page, same as the website name. I'm hosting my first public facing event on Friday. Yes. Friday, 3:00, I believe. So you want to be an ally is the name of it. 1 hour. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. I'll present the deck and kind of run through some of my thoughts. So make sure
Love it. I'm going to pass that on as well.
I am too. So, and as we go out to the outro, I was going to ask you, hey, is there anything you want to tell your listeners? But I think you summed it up really well with the pebble. And so now I'm going to take what do I want my pebble when I throw it? What is that impact that I want to leave, that lasting impact? So I would tell listeners, think about the ripple effect of the pebble that you're going to throw out.
Mm-hmm. Everyone has a pebble, right?
To throw the pebble.
Yes. We will be sharing our Bold Black Girl of the Month segment on LinkedIn. So if you're not following all of us, please make sure you are following us on LinkedIn because we will be having this featured as one of our articles. All right. So thank you, Jenae, again for being our guest. Yes, we really appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Peace.
Bye.